Ay, 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 ay. Sorry. That, like, killed the mood and everything. Stupid laptop. Sorry about my laptop. Totally killed the mood there. Uh... And I couldn't just, go back, so I had to restart the chapter. Yeah, sorry about that. Swear, today's an issue-filled day. Okay. What are you playing at? Stanley growled disdainfully. Finally realized you can only push your luck so far. She responded with a faint snicker. It's not my policy to resist when things are hopeless. Her tone was detached, her intentions unreadable. Good. That'll make this easy. Stanley kept the barrel of his gun pointed at Alfred's head. This is for my brother. The words hung in his throat, unspoken. A surge of emotion coursed through him. Just a tiny bit more pressure from his index finger, and he could put a bullet right through Alfred's head. His long journey would finally reach its conclusion. But although he had wished for this moment more than anything, his finger didn't move. If he pulled the trigger now, would that truly be the end? His mind reeled at the implications. Tatena watched Stanley closely, eventually letting out a tiny sigh of relief. They were in this together, after all. Now they just needed to be careful not to let down their guard. He kept one eye on Alfred as he went to pick up the gun she discarded. But he was too late. The gun was gone. This is for Kanan! Maria had lunged forward, snatching up the gun. Maria, no! Osawa cried. What are you thinking? She ignored her father, taking aim at Alfred's forehead. Kanan's dead. And you're gonna pay. The smoldering rage she'd fought to hold back blazed up with renewed fury. Maria, Stanley said calmly. Put down the gun. He had nothing but words to stop her. There was no telling what Alfred might do if he took his gun off her. What will this accomplish? He asked, keeping his tone as level as possible. Maria's face remained awash with anger. Maria, her father pleaded. Please, don't do this. Tateno took a step forward. Go on, hand me the gun, he said. Stay back! Maria's arm trembled as she aimed the gun. Everyone stood frozen, not even daring to breathe. The slightest wrong move might bring disaster. The silence roared. I don't care, Alfred sneered. If you want to shoot, then shoot. You do want to avenge Kanan, don't you? Yes, I do. Maria tightened her grip on the gun. Memories of her friend drifted through her mind. To Maria, born into peace, meeting Kanan had been like touching a world beyond her own, a far more complicated world. Kanan had blood on her hands from the time she was a little girl. A walking contradiction of cruelty and childishness. And yet, she had lived her life according to her own unshakable beliefs. Meeting her had made Maria think hard about her own identity. What did it mean to be Japanese? No, that wasn't the question. What did it mean to be Maria Osawa? That was the crux of it all. They had been able to find common ground, despite differing ideals, because both possessed an unshakable sense of self. The tense equilibrium came crashing down as Maria let out a shout. "This is for Kanan!" She pulled the trigger, but her shot went wide, shattering the window of a nearby car. The sudden gunshot caught Stanley off guard. Alfred didn't miss her opening. She rolled swiftly across the pavement, drawing the small pistol she hidden in an ankle holster. Maria hastily tried to aim for a second shot. "Dad?" Osawa collapsed at Maria's feet. "Dad!" Her father went limp. Stanley dived at Alfred. He grabbed hold of her right wrist, the one clutching the gun, and slammed her head down hard against the pavement. She made no attempt to resist. In a moment, he had subdued her. "Maria, you're not hurt, are you?" Osawa croaked feebly as his daughter gathered him up in her arms. "I'm fine, but Dad, you're..." Blood was gushing through Osawa's shirt. Maria pressed her hand against the wound, but the bleeding wouldn't stop. "Look, just hurry. Get here as fast as you can." Tatena was on his cell phone, calling for an ambulance. "I know there's a traffic jam. Just figure something out. Please." His voice was rage with desperation. It was ragged with desperation. "Dad, hang in there." Large tears streamed from Maria's eyes. I can't read. I'm too caught up in emotion. So this is what it's like. Osawa lay with his head in his daughter's lap, struggling to rasp out his words. My body just reacted before I had any time to think. I finally understand what a virus must feel like. His eyes were hollow. I never told you when you told me, did I? About what started my fascination with virus research. Dad, try not to talk right now. Maria squeezed her father's hand. Almost imperceptibly, he squeezed back. It probably isn't a very interesting story, he said. But I'd like for you both to hear it anyway. I know. And we will. After this, I promise we will. Maria's words brought a contented smile to Osawa's face. I'm glad. So glad. It's all right, just don't talk right now. This time, at least, I was there for you. Osawa slowly shut his eyes. Dad? Maria said, but her father didn't answer. Dad, don't die! You can't die! The sound of ambulance sirens wailed in the distance. Maria clutched her father's hand, trying to make her grip firm and reassuring, just as his had been for her back inside the laboratory. Please, don't die! She repeated the words inwardly over and over and over. A black car of foreign make arrived at the laboratory and pulled up to the curb. Stanley's superior, Gordon, emerged from the back. A few of his men followed and promptly placed Alfred in handcuffs. "Well done," Gordon said. Stanley gave him a slight nod. "I'll be taking Alfred back to headquarters. You can finish up here." "Understood, sir." Gordon shoved Alfred into the back seat and slid in alongside her, and the car drove off. "Who was that just now?" Tateno asked Stanley. "My boss. Sorry, but we'll be taking Alfred into custody." "You will, huh?" Tateno frowned, but decided not to press the point. The ambulance arrived at last, and Osawa was loaded inside. Maria remained at his side, still weeping, still softly calling out to him. He could sense her there, though her voice sounded awfully far away. Is this the end, then? He was vaguely aware that he was dying, but he was not afraid. At the far end of a hazy tunnel, he could still see Maria. My, she had grown. She had grown so very much. If he were an organism that multiplied by dividing itself, he would die knowing that he left his best selves behind. He had only one wish now. That Maria and Hitomi would go on to lead happy lives. His vision was growing steadily more dim. Tiny motes of light flickered and wavered faintly before his eyes. It looked a lot like the very first time he had ever peered through a microscope. And that was enough for him. Unexpectedly, Maria's cell phone rang in Stanley's pocket. He'd meant to give it back to her, but the ambulance had already departed. The phone continued to ring for some time, but eventually fell into a death-like silence. I hope that was Kanan, that she's still alive somehow. Let's see. It's 12:02, I think. No, the timer, never mind. 2 seconds. Achi held his breath. He could no longer feel the seconds ticking by. The numbers on the display were changing more and more slowly. But still he watched in fear. 02. It was impossible not to fixate on the countdown. 02. 02. 02. Kano and Achi continued to stare at the timer. 02. It had stopped. The timer had actually stopped. We did it! Achi dropped to his knees with a cry of triumph. The rest of the Shibuya Scramble burst into cheers. You're one reckless guy, you know that? Kano held his hand out. Achi grinned up at him. That makes two of us. The two clasped hands firmly, their handshake conveying more than any words could have. Achi! That's the wrong person! Achi! Dang, I wanted a romantic thing. Suzumu came rushing over. You did it, man. I know you could do it. I knew you could do it. The two bumped fists. It weren't just me, Achi said. Could never have done it without your guys' help. Suzumu smiled bashfully. Hey, Suzumu. Take care of SOS for me. You got it. Suzumu looked him squarely in the eye. Achi gave a little nod, and the two solemnly bumped fists again. Suddenly there was a blinding flash. Achi spun around to see Chiaki standing there, beaming happily, her digital camera ready for another shot. "Hey, everyone gather up!" Norikawa called out to Achi and his pals. "You guys are the heroes of Shibuya!" "Photo time, everyone!" Chiaki said. "Get ready!" The young men struck a pose together. "Wait! Her too!" Norikawa ushered Hitomi over to stand with Achi. "Hitomi?" Achi stared at her shyly. It was all thanks to Hitomi that he'd been able to do what he'd done. Keeping Shibuya safe. Keeping his promise to Suzune. Hitomi had been his inspiration for it all. There were so many things he wanted to say, but he couldn't get the right words out. "Achi... I... Hitomi's cheeks were damp with tears. "Hey now, little lady," Norikawa called. "No crying now. Come on, show us a smile." He struck a goofy pose beside Chiaki. At last, the smile returned to Hitomi's face. "It really is the best." "Huh?" Hitomi looked up at Achi in confusion. "Really is the best, Your smile," he said. "It's the best. I don't care what anyone else says." He spoke so earnestly that Hitomi couldn't help but smile even more. "Okay, here we go, people. Get your best faces on." At Norikawa's signal, everyone let out a joyous victory cry. The person in the back. "Come on, guys," Suzumu shouted. "Let's lift Achi up where everyone could see him." The members of SOS let out another roar. "Huh? No, you don't gotta do that, guys. Hey, cut it out!" But Achi had already been swallowed by the enthusiastic throng. Heave-ho! 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 There in the middle of the scramble, Achi was being hailed as a hero. Kana looked on with a satisfied smile. What they had achieved together was nothing less than a miracle. It had taken a lot of luck and more than a few coincidences for them to stop the bomb. Coincidences? Kana muttered to himself. No, that wasn't right. This was something different altogether. Fate, that's what it was. And not just one person's fate. The destinies of several people had collided, gathering momentum until coincidence became inevitability and Shibuya was saved. The raucous crowd tossed Achi high into the air again and again. As a plainclothes detective, Kana would probably never be showered with adulation quite like that. Well, that was alright. A detective's duty was to ensure the safety of the people. He didn't put his life on the line so that he could be a hero. Just seeing all those smiles, it was good enough for him. Kana only needed the approval of one person, and that was Rumi. Rumi, I hope she managed to get out of Shibuya okay. Suddenly worried, Kana pulled out his cell phone. There were a whole bunch of things he wanted to tell her. He couldn't share the whole story, police rules wouldn't allow it, but he wanted to let her know as much as he could. That the kidnapping case had been resolved safely, for instance. That he learned about the tortured past of the detective he so admired. That his partner was going to pull through. That he'd managed to finally talk to her father. That he'd put his life on the line to save Shibuya from danger. Rumi would listen quietly to the very end, and then, Kano thought, he knew just what she'd say. Short and sweet, in that gentle voice of hers. Good job. agree. I didn't want to interrupt the credit. Really enjoyed the story, characters. Just a really good game overall. Gordon and Alfred sat in the back seat as the car sped along the highway. Here. Gordon tossed the handcuff key onto the seat beside him. No, what are you doing? What happened down at the Scramble? Alfred asked, picking up the key and unlocking her cuffs. Leland Palmer was arrested by the Japanese police, and the bomb in the attaché case was defused, apparently. Still, Palmer couldn't pose a problem once we get him into the CIA custody. I see. Much obliged. You really got yourself backed into a corner there, didn't you? Gordon said. Yeah. I was only able to accomplish half of what I intended. Half? Alfred produced a vial from her pocket. It was filled with red liquid. Is that... He told me his blood? Gordon asked. Indeed. I managed to acquire the antiviral. But when? Gordon peered at her in bewilderment. When I blew up the minivan. In the dim light of the vehicle, Alfred's eyes shone darkly, like those of a wounded animal. Extracting the blood from Hitomi while she was unconscious had been a simple matter. Saving the girl's life had been more than just a means of ensuring her trust. Alfred had been looking for the right moment to carry out the extraction. Total secrecy was essential. If it became public knowledge that the drug existed, and that some of it had been stolen, the value of the UO virus would plummet. Our primary objective here was to destroy that research facility. Still, getting our hands on the antiviral is better than nothing. Well done as always, Alfred. Gordon's hard expression softened, but Alfred was in no mood to return his smile. If Maria Osawa had remained inside the facility, her plan would have succeeded. Everything else up until that point had gone off without a hitch. The one thing Alfred hadn't anticipated was Maria bringing the bomb outside. She had injected Maria with a knockout drug back at Endo Electronics that should have kept her from moving around for a while, even after she regained consciousness. And in any case, she wouldn't have expected the girl to just march into the midst of an armed standoff. She had been certain that Maria would never leave the lab. She had misjudged how strong the girl's feelings for Conan were. Maria's body had been put into a state of torpor. There were a bunch of people pointing guns at each other. And still she had been undeterred. Alfred's plan had hinged on Maria's relationship with Conan. And, ironically, that same relationship had made the plan fall apart. It was true that she accomplished half of her goals, but Alfred still couldn't shake her sense of failure. She softly bit her lip as she gazed out through the car window. The bright windows of a few buildings shone out in the midst of the otherwise darkened city. A group of tiny lights that refused to be washed out by the darkness. Woo! So this is the normal ending. There's a whole bunch of other endings. White bookmark. Okay. Yay! Alright, let's see. Do I press... yeah, R1 here. Suzune. Who's this? It was almost 1 o'clock. Takia Kazama watched the orderly collect his meal tray, waiting for the door to fully close behind him before slipping out of bed. He dragged the folding chair closer to the window and sat down. Then he meticulously scanned the entire length of the vast central courtyard outside. From up here on the second floor, he had a great view of the whole open space. The hospital building was shaped like a boxy U, enclosing a promenade that wove its way between the trees, where pajama-clad patients and visitors from their families were enjoying the first day of sunshine to come along in a while. Not yet. She still isn't here. I seem to be doing okay today. If she does show up in the courtyard, I'll sneak out for a walk myself. And then I'll make sure I go and talk to her. Hey, what's your name? No, I can't just up and ask her like that. Maybe I should tell her my name first. I'm Takia. Who are you? Or is it silly to tell her what my name is when she hasn't even asked? So, what's wrong with you? No, she's been here at least as long as I have. Whatever it is can't be anything small. So yeah, no way can I open with that. That comes later. Much later. Nice weather we're having. What am I, 90 years old? I need to say something hip. You come out here all the time, huh? No, that's terrible. I might as well say I've been watching you. She'll think I'm a stalker. In the midst of his internal debate, Takia happened to cast his gaze back out into the courtyard. And there she was, standing right under his window. She wore a white cardigan over her pajamas, standing with her head tilted back and her eyes closed, basking in the light of the sun. The angle finally gave him a good look at her face. The wind caught her evenly cropped bangs, blowing them back to expose the delicate curve of her forehead. She looked deeply happy as she stood, breathing, a gentle smile across her face. Heartbeats of spring. Takia felt as though she were smiling at him, and it brought a tightness to his chest. He'd always thought that it would make him impossibly happy were that angelic smile ever to turn his way, so why did it hurt so much instead? He saw her open her eyes back up, and he hurriedly backed away from the window. She saw me! Or did she? No, there's no way she could see in here with the glare. But what does it even matter? I was gonna talk to her anyway. Right? So go on, get out there. Fighting his nerves, Takia moved back to the windowsill. She was gone. Where had she disappeared to? Takia scrambled out of his room and rushed to the elevator. It'll be alright, my muscles aren't too stiff. Today's a good day. Takia? Takia, where are you going? He recognized the voice of a familiar nurse calling out from behind him, but he ignored her and jammed his thumb on the close button. Once he was down on the first floor, he made his way to the courtyard exit, slipped on some sandals, and headed outside. He pretended to be out for a walk as he wandered in search of the girl, but went the length of the courtyard and back to the spot under his window without finding her. That's odd. Usually she stays out here a lot longer. You look a little pale. Are you alright? Asked a voice. Huh? He turned and saw the girl sitting on a nearby bench. Takia took half a step back in surprise. Somehow he'd missed her in the shadow of the trees. I'm sorry, she said. Did I startle you? No, not really. You look like you're in pain. Should I go get a doctor? She was right. He wasn't used to so much walking. I'll be alright. I just need to rest for a bit, he said. Relieved, he managed to answer. Lately, his words hadn't been coming out all that well. The girl stood up and reached a hand out to him, but Takia couldn't bring himself to take it. Instead, he simply sat down on the bench. Not too close to her, but not too far away either. His heart had suddenly begun pounding, but he couldn't tell if it was because of his exhaustion or because he was so close to her. So, you're the boy from the room up there, right? She pointed to his window on the second floor, and Takia had to stifle a gasp. A little earlier, we made eye contact, didn't we? Did we? Takia mumbled, averting his gaze. I was just spacing out. I didn't notice. I've seen you up there from time to time. You look lonely. Are you not able to leave your room much? She didn't notice that I'm always looking at her. Good. Yeah, I get tired real easy. I see. I'm not able to get very much exercise myself. But they told me that when I'm feeling well enough for it, I should get up and walk around a bit so my leg muscles don't get weak. You have a problem with your legs? No, with my heart. And they say that legs are like a second heart. They play an important part in blood circulation. So if my leg muscles get too weak, it's bad for my health. You know how when a racehorse breaks a leg, it winds up dying? I guess it's sort of like that. Her tone was cheerful enough, as if she talked about this all the time, but the thought filled Takia with sadness. So, he began. Yes? Do you mind if I ask you your name? As he fumbled the words out, the girl broke into a beaming smile. That wonderful smile, the one that until now he had only seen from afar so many, many times. Suzune Endo. That Suzune is written with the characters for bell and sound, so like the chiming of bells. Suzune, the chiming of bells. It was a name that suited her soothing voice perfectly. Suzune Endo. Suzune Endo. Takia repeated the name to himself over and over. What's your name? Takia. Takia Kazuma. Takia Kazuma, huh? That's a pretty cool name. I guess it means tough guy or something. Not that I live up to that. The truth was that Takia was always embarrassed to tell strangers his name. I don't know about that. You seem pretty cool to me, Takia. So, how old are you? Takia's heart sank. Only kids had to be told they were cool. I'm 14. What about you, Suzune? From afar, he hadn't realized how tall she was. Taller than him and probably older. I'm 17. He thought the difference would be less. 3 whole years apart? Takia's heart sank further. Now she seemed even more unattainable. As he tried to think of a way to nonchalantly ask Suzune where her room was, he heard the slap-slap of sandals approaching. Suzune! A boy came running up. He was young, maybe in 1st grade or so. Hi, Ken. Long time no see. This your brother? Takia asked. No, he's in the room next to mine. Who's this? Who's this? The boy clung possessively to Suzune's knee as he peered at Takia. This is Takia Kazama. He's a patient like us. Huh. Hey, I got some candy. Wanna eat it? The boy tugged on Suzune's hand. Oh, yeah? Alright then. Takia, I'll see you later. Yeah, later. Later? Later when? Am I actually going to get to see her again? As Takia watched the young boy drag Suzune back inside, he felt a bitter surge of resentment. He thought that finally getting the chance to talk to her would make him feel a lot better. But instead he felt worse than he had back when all he could do was stare at her through the window. The sunlit garden suddenly struck him as cold and desolate, so he trudged back inside, his muscles faintly shuddering with each step. He made his way back toward the elevator to find the head nurse waiting in the corridor, glaring at him. He kept his head down and tried to slip on past her, but she snapped at him as he drew near. What were you talking about with Miss Endo? Huh? Takia blushed at the idea that she'd been watching them, but he soon realized she was being serious. You shouldn't get too close to that girl. Why not? He asked. She may not look it, but she's seriously ill. Neither of you has the ability to fend off a major infection, and we certainly don't want you to go catching anything. The nurse looked away as she spoke, rattling off the words. But they let her go outside like that, right? Yes, that's true. But Takia, why in the world did you go out? Did the doctor tell you to go for a walk? No. But I thought that since I was feeling pretty well and all... You expect me to believe that? You're shaking. Come on, let's get you back to bed. The nurse ushered Takia into the elevator and escorted him back to his room. He was actually quite exhausted, and so he quietly got back into bed. Nurse? Takia called out to her as she was leaving. Yes? Suzune... Miss Endo, I mean, she's got a bad heart, doesn't she? Did she tell you that? For whatever reason, the head nurse seemed quite shocked that Suzune had shared this information. Yeah. What's she sick with? It's something very serious. That's why you ought to leave her alone. But she's gonna get better, right? Takia regretted the question the instant he asked it. The nurse's grim expression was answer enough. A sweet and cheerful girl like that had an incurable illness. For a while, Takia couldn't even believe it. After the nurse had left, he stared at the closed door in a daze. From that day on, Takia kept up his vigilant watch on the courtyard, sneaking out of his room whenever he caught sight of Suzune. Bit by bit, the two of them began talking more. Sometimes she'd come out 2 days in a row, and sometimes he wouldn't see her for nearly a week at a time. Other times he would wander the hospital corridors in search of a room, only to be intercepted and sent back to his own room by the head nurse. Suzune was quite popular, most especially old men, old women, and young children at the hospital all seemed devoted to her, their faces lighting up whenever she was around. She was kind enough to listen to all their grumbling or trifling conversations. Takia was equal parts impressed and baffled by her ability to relate to them. I could never put up with that sort of thing. More than anything, though, her popularity was frustrating. He would have had much more time alone with her if all these people weren't always around. He felt like he was the last in a long line of supplicants waiting for her to grace him with a few moments of her time. But after she learned about Takia's condition, perhaps out of some strange form of camaraderie, Suzune seemed to develop more of an interest in him. Wilson's disease. Liver cells, excess copper. I've never heard of it. Is it serious? Suzune's concern seemed entirely genuine. For a brief moment, Takia was almost happy about his rare and grave condition. But he couldn't say that, of course, and so he just nodded. Yeah, if you look, you can see that my eyes have turned kind of brown. Takia pointed at one of his eyes to indicate the pale brown ring in his cornea. Yeah, copper. It's something you're born with, where copper builds up inside your body. I'd get really tired super easily, and when the doctors checked me out, it turned out I had hepatitis caused by Wilson's disease. My liver was already seriously damaged, and the only thing that'll fix it is a transplant. That's why I'm in here. But finding a compatible donor has been hard. I guess we're in the same boat. You need a transplant too, Suzune? Yeah, I'm still waiting. I have what's called dilated cardiomyopathy. Heart muscle cells. They've tried other forms of treatment, like limiting food and water intake for long periods, putting in an implanted defibrillator and other things. But it looks like a transplant's the only real solution. Dilated cardiomyopathy. Defibrillator, what are those? Takia didn't understand all the vocabulary, but it sounded like her condition was even worse than his own. But the biggest problem, Suzune continued, is that there just aren't a lot of heart donors in Japan. And moreover, abruptly, she fell silent. A look of loneliness crossed her face. Then she turned back to Takia with a reassuring smile. You'll find a match soon, Takia. Everything will be fine. And you'll find one too, Suzune. Isn't that right? Takia felt like something was caught in his throat. It was hard to get the words out. Yeah, if I'm really lucky. Suzune hesitated before continuing. But even then, I doubt I'll be able to get the surgery. Her tone was so matter-of-fact. Why not? Takia asked. My family doesn't have much money, so we can't afford to get surgery overseas. But it's alright. I don't really like the idea of being saved by getting some poor brain-dead person's heart. I mean, that's what it comes down to, you know? Unless someone else dies, I can't be saved. If I had to think of some family out there grieving over their loss, I wouldn't be able to be happy, even if it did mean I got better. Takia had never thought about that. Just imagining part of some stranger's body getting put inside his own was more than scary enough. Still, if he had to choose between that and death, well, it wasn't even a contest. But if you don't get a transplant, then everybody dies. That's just how it is. For some of us, it just happens earlier than for others. You can't just give up like that, Takia cried. I won't survive unless I get someone's liver. But if I'm lucky enough to actually get one, I'll be happy about it. The doctor told me that people only give their organs on death because they want to. They want to save lives. Suzune appeared flustered. I'm sorry. I know that's the way I should be thinking about it. I'm sure that things will go well for you, Takia. And then they'll find a donor for you. And you shouldn't hesitate to get the surgery. By getting better, you'll be honoring the dead in a way. But... She let out a sigh. That's not gonna happen to me. Why not? My blood type is really unique. I don't think a compatible donor is ever going to turn up. A unique blood type? Takia stammered a little as he asked. You mean like RH negative? Suzune shook her head. You've probably never heard of it. It's called Bombay. They say only a few dozen people have it in all of Japan. One of that handful of people would have to happen to go brain dead. Then they need to get that person here before their heart stopped. And then the surgery itself would need to go well enough. That's too many coincidences to hope for, you know? Takia was too surprised to say anything at all. I'm not about to live what's left of my life expecting that I'll win the lottery like that, Suzune said. It's better to focus as best as I can on what I can do. On what you can do? What do you mean? There are a lot of patients here like you and me who have been here for a very long time. Most of them are senior citizens whose families rarely, if ever, come to see them. And I kind of enjoy listening to older people talk. They've all got plenty of interesting stories to tell. But more importantly, it brings smiles to their faces, having someone who will listen to them. They tell me that, for a little while, it's like they're young again, like their pain has gone away. And seeing them smile, it makes me happy too. I want to make friends with as many people as possible, to learn about as many people as I can. I don't have time to wallow in my own misfortune. Takia had assumed that, unlike himself, Suzune was as cheerful as she seemed to be because she had hoped that she'd get better. He had been suffering through his own illness, and had thought day in and day out about how unlucky he was to have been born with it. Though he hated to admit it, he had long since discarded any hope that they'd find a donor and give him a successful transplant. Until he met Suzune, he'd lived every day cursing his fate. Their circumstances were so similar, so why were they so different? Suzune was like an angel. Takia felt like a miserable excuse for a human being. I have to spend a lot of time resting in bed, Suzune said, so I read a lot. Novels, essays. Sometimes I try reading more difficult books on philosophy. I don't always understand a lot of it, but sometimes it just clicks, you know? And I read high school textbooks sometimes too. Well, except for math. I've given up on that. Takia didn't like reading. When he was in his room, he just watched TV. A lot of the time, the only shows that were on were garbage, and he knew they were garbage while he was watching them. But there wasn't anything else that caught his interest. His motivation to study was non-existent, and he certainly didn't have any textbooks in his room. It wasn't like he was going to go on and live a full life, get a normal job, have a normal family. So what point was there in studying? That's what he had always thought, at least. Am I just wrong? Halfway through her dinner, Suzune found that she lost her appetite. Her mood was bleak. Why did I get so high and mighty with Takia like that? All I ever do is pretend to be the person I wish I was. In reality, all I do is worry about just when this heart of mine is going to stop. I know it's normal to be afraid of dying. I practice smiling for my father and my brother. I don't want them to see my fear. I was happy and a little bit shocked when I realized that my fake smiles actually worked. My smiles might have been forced, but the ones I got from those old men and old women and all the little kids, those were real. Oh, hey Suzune. Hello, young lady. Everyone's always so happy to see me. At some point, Suzune had realized that she was no longer able to tell if her own smile was fake or not. She wasn't lying when she said that the smiles on other people's faces brought her joy. But every now and then, the loneliness returned. She wished she could tell someone how scared she was, finally let herself shed the tears she held in for so long. But she'd never be able to do that to either her father or her brother. She didn't want them worrying about her any more than they already did. Her pulse grew erratic. Her intense heartbeat hammered like the hoofbeats of a horse at full gallop. Gallop rhythm. Yikes. Oh no, heart failure. A sensation she'd known since childhood. Then she felt an intensely painful electrical shock course through her. Her implanted defibrillator had activated. After suffering through the pain for about 10 seconds, she felt her heartbeat stabilize. I'm alright. My heart is still pumping. But despite her relief, it was impossible not to think about how her time was drawing ever closer. If you're in pain, just say so. It's okay to admit it. With a start, Suzune looked up and saw a nurse in her doorway. She hadn't even noticed the door opening. Was it time to have her temperature taken again? She hurriedly put on the mask of a smile. Huh? No, I'm okay. It's all calmed down now. Your illness isn't the problem. Hiding it is. If you need a little comfort, just ask. Suzune was at a loss for words. It was dark outside, and with the lights in her room turned off, she couldn't get a good look at the nurse's face. The woman was tall and slender, and had a rather nice build. Was there a nurse like that on staff in this ward? She couldn't remember. What are you talking about? Suzune felt her smile warp as she struggled to conceal a sudden upwelling of sorrow. You're facing your condition like an adult, but from your father's perspective, you're still his little girl. It's completely natural for your family to worry about you. This person knows who I am. I'm not sure how, but she knows everything. Suzune let her mask fall. She looked down at her hands, balled tightly into fists, and she let the tears come. I want to be a strong person, but I can't do it. Everyone tells me what a strong, cheerful girl I am, but it's all a lie. The words spilled out as her emotions came rushing to the surface. I'm afraid of dying. I'm afraid of getting surgery. I'm even afraid to go on living. What scares me more than anything is when night comes. I'm afraid every time I go to sleep that I might not wake up again. I thought that if I kept pretending I wasn't scared, that eventually I'd be able to fool myself. But that didn't happen. I'm the only one I can't fool. I think you're plenty strong. Huh? Everyone's afraid of death. That's why they try their hardest to look away from it. Why they try to forget during the day-to-day that it's coming. But you face it every day. Face it head-on. You're a stronger girl than you think. Everyone else probably underestimates your strength. The nurse's voice was smooth and soft. Her words flowed over Suzune, washing away her darker emotions. That's why you shouldn't push yourself so hard. If you keep trying to face all your fears by yourself, then one day you might break. It's okay to let it out every now and then. Vent your frustrations. You're fighting so hard every day. There's nothing wrong with asking for a little help. The nurse sat down on the bed and began to gently stroke Suzune's hair. If you're ever afraid to go to sleep, call for me anytime. I'm always here for you. I'll watch until you wake up in the morning. That should help, yes? I couldn't ask you that, is what Suzune had meant to say. But the comforting warmth that enveloped her stopped the words, carrying her gently towards sleep. It was a feeling she'd nearly forgotten. Like something from very long ago. But from when, exactly? When Suzune woke the next morning, the nurse was gone, but she did not despair. If she ever needed her, the nurse would be there for her again. Of that, she was sure. Good morning, Miss Endo. The nurse who came to take her temperature was the usual one, not the one who had been there in the night. Good morning. A natural smile came to Suzune's face. She felt deeply grateful that she'd gotten to live to see another day. The weather was nice. So after lunch, Suzune headed out into the courtyard. More than anyone else, she hoped to run into Takia. She understood his outlook on the world the moment she learned of his condition. Plus, it was kind of cute seeing how hard he tried to hide the way he felt. The fondness she felt for him was like that for a younger brother. At some point, she realized that they had a special bond. There was a sense of solidarity, knowing that they were both waiting on a transplant for an otherwise incurable disease. She wanted to say that the things she told him that day before, that was just her searching for an ideal, something to live up to. She wasn't philosophical. She wasn't enlightened. She just wanted to be honest about how hard it was every day. Surely he would understand. But Suzune didn't see Takia in the courtyard that afternoon. She made small talk with several other patients like she usually did, then headed back to her room. Takia didn't turn up the next day either, nor the day after that. She would look up at his window from the courtyard, but she never saw him. Where was he? Had his condition taken a turn for the worse? Was he no longer well enough to go outside? Suzune had never been to the second floor where his room was, but she knew the first floor well enough that she could guess the layout well enough to avoid getting lost. With that in mind, she decided to pay Takia a visit. She went up to the second floor, walking slowly as she eyed the nameplates for the rooms along the courtyard side. There, right about where she expected it to be, she found it, Takia Kazama. She'd been afraid that his nameplate had been removed. If it hadn't been there, that would have meant he'd been discharged. That his room had been swapped for some reason. Or else... As Suzune was about to knock, a voice called out from behind her. "Miss Endo?" She turned around to see an unfamiliar nurse standing there. Perhaps she was in charge of the ward, or had seen Suzune walking around before, and that was how she knew her name. "Yes?" Suzune asked. "Were you looking for Takia?" Yeah. I hadn't seen him in a while, so I was wondering." "I'm sorry. Takia wants to get out more than he does, but honestly, he's not in any shape to be moving around much. We're worried about infection as well, so we limited his visitors. You probably shouldn't be wondering this far yourself." The nurse pointedly pulled the sliding door to Takia's room closed. "If I could just see him real quick." "No," the nurse snapped, then hurriedly cleared her throat and spoke more softly. "You wouldn't want his condition to get worse, would you?" Suzune saw that she'd had to back down. She returned obediently to her own ward. But she had a hard time accepting the fact that she couldn't visit Takia. Does the nurse have some kind of grudge against me? Not only does she know my name and know about my condition, she must also know that I've been talking with Takia in the courtyard. Does she think I'm the reason his condition has gotten worse? Tsune knew that his health wasn't as good as he might have claimed, and she felt a little guilty that she hadn't been as considerate as she perhaps should have. After that, whenever Suzune went out for a walk, she made a point of swinging by Takia's room, asking several nurses and doctors about his condition. They would always say he was doing fine, but staunchly refused to let her see him. Is he maybe already... Suzune couldn't help but imagine the worst. Is everyone just working together to keep me in the dark? But why would they do that? Do they think I'm his girlfriend and they're trying to keep me from the shock of finding out or something? No, that was ridiculous. Besides, this was a hospital. Suzune knew full well that they didn't have the time to put on some weird piece of theater after a patient had passed away. There must be some other reason. Some reason they don't want us to see each other. Willing to do whatever she could to discover that reason, Suzune tried changing the time of day that she stopped by Takiya's room. Maybe, if nobody was watching, she'd be able to sneak a peek inside. If someone happened to be coming or going, she might even be able to get a look at his face. But Suzune never imagined the way she'd finally wind up seeing him again. Oh god. On that day, she had been hiding behind one of the heated meal carts used for delivering dinner to the patients. She followed the orderlies as they brought the cart toward Takiya's room. They'd have to open his door in order to bring his tray inside. But before she reached his room, the door swung forcefully open, and a bed was swiftly pushed from inside. Doctors and nurses, their faces pale, ushered it along, pushing the meal cart out of the way as they raced down the corridor. Takiya lay on the bed, his eyes closed, his face severely jaundiced. He didn't appear to be conscious. Takiya! Suzune called out without thinking. One of the nurses glanced back at her briefly before disappearing from sight with the others as they brought the bed into the elevator. Takiya! As Suzune stood there dumbstruck, her eyes strayed to the open door to his room. With shaky footsteps, she went inside. Takiya's room was largely the same as her own. There was a locker by the entrance, along with a small refrigerator. Over by the window was a TV stand. Next to that was a bookshelf packed with books. She picked up one of the books atop the bedside table. It was a beginner's primer on topics such as organ transplantation and brain death. On the bookshelf were other, more difficult-looking medical volumes intended for experts. Takiya's been studying up on diseases? I wonder if he's been holed up in here reading these the whole time. Maybe he'd overdone it studying. That would be a cruel irony. Suzune prayed to a god she had never before believed in. Please, save him. Takiya blearily opened his eyes. This wasn't his room. An artificial respirator was fitted over his nose and mouth, and several tubes ran between his body and a hemofiltration machine. Vinyl curtains enclosed the area around his bed. Regulate electrolytes and waste product and use it in ICU. Several people bustled frantically about. The last thing Takiya remembered was being in his room. Was that minutes ago? Or has it been days? Excuse me. Could someone... Takiya paused. His voice didn't even sound like his own. Doctor, he's regained consciousness, a nurse announced. At that, the face of his attending physician, Dr. Seiki, suddenly came into view. He was wearing an operating mask. Takiya? The doctor said. Please hang in there. Takiya! It sounded like his father and mother were there, on the other side of the curtain. If the staff had called them here, did that mean he was on the brink? What day is it? Huh? What was that? The respirator was making Takia's voice hard to understand. He struggled to form the words. Today? What day is it? It's April 5th. April 5th. There were still over 3 weeks to go until his 14th birthday. 15th birthday. What was going on? It's too late to save me, isn't it? You mustn't say things like that. How much longer do I have? Will I make it another month? Seiki lowered his eyes. No guarantees, then. Please, doctor. I just need 3 more weeks. Please do whatever you can to let me live for just 3 more weeks. I can't die yet. Dr. Seiki nodded, a thoughtful look on his face. Is there something you can do? Please. I don't want to die yet. I haven't done anything yet. Please, just a little more time. There is a life-prolonging procedure, highly experimental. However, I don't care about the risks. I just don't want to die yet. There's something called an artificial liver system. Clinical trials have only just been concluded in Japan. It's a device that uses cells harvested from pigs. If things go well... Sorry. Rather than just 3 weeks, it might be possible to keep you alive until a donor turns up. The mention of pig cells was startling. But right now was no time to be squeamish. Please, doctor. If there's even the slightest chance, it's worth it. After Takia was rushed to the ICU, Suzune went to check up on him every day, without regard for her own well-being. Day after day she visited, only to be told that he was still in an unconscious state. 3 weeks went by without a change. Then, one morning, while passing by the kitchenette on her way to the ICU, Suzune overheard some nurses talking. Did you hear? Takia's regained consciousness. For better or for worse. Poor kid. He keeps saying that he doesn't want to die yet. That he wants to live. He's only, what, 14? The young nurse's voice was tearful. Suzune felt a new kind of pain in her chest. He's running out of time for a transplant. And with the rare blood type. Rare blood type. Suzune stopped in her tracks, then rushed back to the kitchenette. Excuse me, what do you mean by rare blood type? The moment she saw Suzune, the nurse clammed up and tried to slip away. Please, hold on. That rare blood type... Is it Bombay? Suzune shouted. The nurses exchanged an awkward look with one another, and though neither of them said anything, Suzune knew she was right. I know, right? I'm trying to express that emotion too. Takia has Bombay blood too. This was a hospital with high-end facilities that drew patients with incurable diseases from all over the country, so maybe it wasn't such a remarkable coincidence. Transfusions for rare blood types such as Bombay were difficult to come by at regional hospitals. There were some advantages to having another such patient on hand nearby. But there were downsides too. Now the inexplicable behavior of the doctors and nurses made sense. They'd been trying to keep Suzune and Takia from each discovering that the other had Bombay blood. It was unsettling enough to know that someone else with a blood type only possessed by a few dozen other people in all of Japan was hospitalized right alongside you. But when both of you were waiting for compatible donors in the hope of receiving a transplant, that was enough to upset anyone's composure. How must have Takia felt when she told him that she had Bombay blood as well? If I die, she could live. Something like that must have crossed his mind. The fact that he started studying up about transplants again must mean he'd been thinking of something. What in the world was he thinking? If our positions were reversed, what would I have done? Suzune knew what she had to do. She headed for the ICU. She got there just as Dr. Seiki, who was her own attending physician as well, emerged from inside. Miss Endo. The doctor stopped, surprised. Suzune drew herself upright and looked him right in the eye. Doctor, please use my liver for a transplant for Takia. You can perform a living liver transplant, right? If you need to take half or even 2/3 of it, then please, by all means. For a moment, Dr. Seiki looked as if he'd taken a punch to the face, but soon his expression resolved into a sad smile. You heard about the blood? Suzune nodded. I'm afraid that won't be possible. A living liver transplant is dangerous enough for a healthy person. Someone in your condition would never be able to tolerate the surgery. You can do it when my time comes then, Suzune said. Regardless, Miss Endo, I can't carry out a living liver transplant between complete strangers. The law doesn't allow it. If the two of you got married, that would be a different story, but that's not possible either. Neither you nor Takia can legally marry until you're 18. Married? Suzune had never thought about such a thing, but if marrying Takia would make the surgery possible, she'd do whatever it took. But apparently the law wasn't going to allow for that either. Well, I don't care what the law says. If I'm the only person who can save Takia, then please take my liver. Doctor, please. I'm afraid what you're asking simply can't be done. You need to focus on your own condition, and on getting better yourself. I'm beyond saving anyway, though. Right? So please, I'm begging you. Takia needs... As Suzune grabbed hold of the doctor's gown, pleading, a sharp pain shot through her chest. The galloping heartbeat was back. No, her pulse had never been quite this erratic before. Her mouth opened and closed reflexively. She was unable to breathe. Doctor... Please... An electrical shock went through her from the implanted defibrillator. The world faded as she slowly collapsed to the floor. Suzune had a long, long dream. Her father was in that dream, and though Suzune couldn't clearly remember her face, her late mother was there too, trying desperately to save her. And then there was Takia. Takia was smiling. A genuine smile. A smile that Suzune had never seen. Takia's mouth was moving, but no sound came out. She tried to read his lips. Thank you. Thank you? Wait, what do you mean? Suzune cried out as she woke. She was staring up at a familiar ceiling. She was back in her own room. She spotted her older brother Achi sleeping in a folding chair nearby. Achi! The word creaked raspily from her throat. Uh-huh. Suzune! You awake? Her brother rose from the chair and excitedly scampered out of the room. With a start, Suzune realized something was attached to her chest. She felt a peculiar sensation, 6 distinct tingles all running from the center to the left side of her chest. Electrocardiograph electrodes. She followed the leads that ran from her chest to the monitor by her pillow and was surprised to see the waveform moving across it. It was her pulse. And, amazingly, the rhythm was solid and strong, nothing like the one she'd been familiar with for so long. No, that's not my pulse. Suzune realized what she was seeing. She understood instinctively. This heart, it was Takia's. She returned with Dr. Seiki, proceeded to check the various monitoring devices by the bed, nodding and smiling with satisfaction. It's good to see you awake again. For now, there don't appear to be any signs of rejection. Of course, we'll need to be vigilant, but this new heart seems to be a good match for you, Miss Endo. It's Takia's, isn't it? Please tell me it's not. I told you I wanted him to have my liver. Takia was dead. If she had his heart now, there was no way he was still alive. Dr. Seiki looked away, and for a while he said nothing. When it comes to who your donor is, I'm not at liberty to say anything. You understand that, right? So instead, let me tell you how things went for Takia in the end. You two were friends. Boyfriend and girlfriend, maybe? Either way, you have a right to know about his passing. Takia's passing. Suzune had already imagined as much, but now she couldn't hold back the tears. Takia's dead. He's dead. Dr. Seiki went on. Takia begged me to help keep him alive just a little bit longer. His family agreed, and so we proceeded with an artificial liver system, a treatment that's relatively untested here in Japan. For a while, his symptoms abated, and he even regained consciousness. The doctor took a breath. But it was already too late. He lapsed into a coma due to acute liver failure, and then developed complications, a condition known as DIC, which causes clotting in blood vessels throughout the body. Initially, we thought he might have hepatic encephalopathy, but a CT scan of the head revealed cerebral edema. These words. He was declared brain dead 2 days after his birthday. He was 15 years old. Dr. Seiki gave her a significant look. Zune wondered what that implied. He was insistent that he make it to 15, Seiki continued. He said there was something he absolutely needed to do. On his birthday, he called for his family and told them, I want to register as an organ donor. Uh-huh. Here in Japan, individuals under 15 years of age aren't allowed to give consent for organ donation. If Takia had died before he turned 15, then his heart, all of his organs rather, could not have been provided to a patient in need. And that was something he wished for very much. Takia had been reading up and studying, and he learned that he needed to survive until he turned 15. and he asked for life-prolonging measures to be taken, all so that he could register as a donor in order to give me his heart. And I don't know who it was, but apparently a surgeon was able to perform a transplant for a patient believed to be an ideal match for his heart. Evidently, this patient was also comatose and in an extremely dire state. But from what I hear, the surgery seems to have gone quite well. Of course, I don't know the identity of the patient either. Suzune strained to move her right hand, setting it atop her chest. Underneath the layers of the bandages, she could feel a heartbeat steady and strong. Takia's heart is beating within me. He left a letter for you. I haven't looked at what's inside, so I'm not sure what it says. Dr. Seiki set a white envelope down on the bedside table, then left the room. Achi, read it to me. She didn't feel strong enough to read it herself, but she didn't want to wait. You sure? Achi asked. All right then, let's see. Achi opened the envelope, slid the letter out, and began to read. Suzune, if you're reading this letter, that means everything has gone well. Congratulations. And also, thank you. Ever since I became sick, no, even before then, I hadn't known what it was like to be happy. I hated the world. I went through my whole life just thinking about how pointless my existence was. An excuse for a human being with no reason to live. What did it matter if I was here or not? I hated that I was going to die so young, but at the same time, it seemed pointless to try to live any longer. And then I met you. I fell in love with you. I love you, Suzune, with all of my heart. With you in this world, I wanted to go on living a little longer, because living would actually have some meaning. When I found out that we had the same blood, I was shocked. It had to be fate, right? Neither of us was going to be able to survive on our own, but if one of us sacrificed herself to the other one could go on living, and I wouldn't be able to bear any world without you in it, Suzune. The answer was clear. I want you to have my heart, Suzune. That's the best possible thing for the both of us. You're probably a little sad, knowing that I'm gone now. I'll be happy if that's the case. But will you please be happy for me now that my heart is inside you? That would make me even happier. Happier than anything. Thank you so much for taking my heart. It'll beat for you as hard as it can. I hope. I wish we could have talked more. If it had only been possible, I would have liked to have gone somewhere with you. But it's okay. This way, I get to be with you forever. I won't be lonely anymore. Goodbye. I'm looking forward to our future together. Takia Kazuma. Achi's voice grew gradually more hoarse as he read. By the end, he was struggling not to weep. Damn it. Did it really have to be like this? Tsune was more astounded than she was sad. Of course she was upset that Takia had died, and she was glad that she was going to live. But above all, she was amazed by the fact that Takia had cared for her as much as he had. That he'd fought so hard to prolong his own life just to save hers. That moved her more deeply than anything she'd ever known. Maybe a young crush couldn't be called real love, but that didn't make it any less pure. Thank you. Goodbye, and I'm looking forward to our future together. The end. So going into that, I knew it was gonna be pretty sad, but... let's see. I'm gonna try to go for the true ending. Don't know how long that'll be, but I'll try to end with that. So Tango. Titano said, I don't want to pull this trigger if I don't have to. And then... Whoops. Jack. If I do get my revenge, what would Frank think? Hold on just a second. I don't know if I'm doing this right, but... I have to set aside my hatred. Right now, I need to just focus on catching this guy. Okay, so if I'm doing this wrong, I apologize. Like, it says on here, press X to advance the screen or whatever. I don't know what that means. You know what? Hold on. Just to be safe, I'm gonna go back real quick to Jack. So, like, I'm gonna do what I kinda do with the other choices. Like, progress a little, you know? I'll just do that. Then... Achi. Okay. That isn't Connell. I'm just gonna assume that the true ending is Alfred being arrested and properly, you know? Or maybe she dies, I don't know. It's okay, thank you. Yeah, it was pretty nice. On the day before, my mom and I went to a K-pop concert. It was pretty fun. One is, if you know the band group, I guess, whatever. And then the day after my actual birthday, we saw the new Ghostbusters movie. I really liked that. I liked the movie before it more, but it was still pretty good. Oh, and like the rest of the week has been me like just recharging from all that. That's why I haven't been streaming in a little while again, but I'll try to, you know, be as regular as I can. Okay, was... Oops. Okay, Maria made her decision. I can't shoot her. I'm not like Kanon. Maria's anger dissipated like smoke in a sudden wind. The tension seeped from her body, and she carefully lowered the gun. What's the matter? Alfred smirked. Why won't you shoot? Her eyes blazed with contempt for Maria's naivete. No. I'm not being naive, Maria told herself. Do unto others as they have done to you. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. What does this reoccurring pattern of retribution really accomplish? It's just an endless cycle of hatred. That's why I'm not going to fight. Because I'm not like Kanan. Tears flooded from her eyes. I'm not like Kanan. But people who are different can still be friends. And I'm going to honor our friendship by not taking revenge. No matter what happens, I'm not going to hurt anyone, Maria said. Maybe that's not very realistic, but this is my fight, and I'll fight the way I choose. She wiped away her tears. For the first time, Maria felt that she understood Kanan. If she'd been able to see her just one more time, she would have been able to speak her mind without fear. I could show Kanan the true me. And maybe then we would be friends for real. But that wasn't going to happen. Not anymore. Maria handed the gun to Tateno, and looked up at the nighttime sky. distance, she could faintly hear the sound of police sirens. Not one star could be seen in the sky over Shibuya. A black car. Please do the right thing here. Well done. They'd put a stop to Alfred's plan, and they had saved Maria's life. That was enough for him. Maybe it even began to atone for what he'd done to Hitomi. Kano, Suzune, Katone. Tateno pictured all of their faces. Perhaps in the end he managed to become worthy of their respect. It's all over, Stanley spoke under his breath. His gaze locked on the car taking Alfred away. The black cloud that hung over his heart had yet to lift. But he knew that today was the day he could finally put revenge aside. No longer would memories of his brother bring only sorrow. This'll do. Won't it, Frank? Abruptly, Maria's cell phone rang in Stanley's pocket. That's right. I meant to give this back to you. He handed the phone to Maria. I wonder who's calling. Maria picked up. She could hardly believe it when she heard the voice on the line. Brusque, yet girlish, with a daredevil ring. A voice that had been burned into her mind since the day she met its owner. No, it can't be. She had been sure she'd never hear that voice again. In an instant, Maria's face was damp with tears of joy. Thank goodness! Oh, thank goodness! Come on! Maria couldn't hold back her sobs. The tears kept coming and coming. She had never wept with joy like this in her life. Oh, too. Hachi held his breath. Okay, so if Hitomi and Achi don't kiss in this ending, I'm gonna riot. So far, not looking good for my Achi Hitomi ending. Rumi, hello? There was no response. Did they have a bad connection? Hello? Rumi, are you there? Can you hear me? Look, the case is closed now. If you're still somewhere close to Shibuya, I'd love to see you if I can. You want to see me, huh? Don't you have a mountain of paperwork you should be doing first? The gruff voice was Shizuo's. Oh, Dad answered the phone. Oh, well, you see, Father, I told you not to call me that. Shizuo barked so loudly over the phone that Kano's ear rang. Right, no, of course. And yes, I'll do my job. I just wanted to check and make sure that Rumi was alright. Looks like I misjudged you. Maybe you are the kind of guy who'll blow off work to go meet with a girl. Dad, hey! Kano heard Rumi's voice cry out with exasperation. Come on, let me have my phone. I know that work is important, sir, Kano said hurriedly. But Rumi is even more important to me. He felt his panic rising. After all that had happened, he didn't want Shizuo to end up with a bad impression. Oh, be quiet. If you want to see Rumi, you can do it once you finish your work. Well, but I'm not sure when that's gonna be. I waited on you today a lot longer than I wanted. So at this point, I don't care how long it takes you. We can wait all night if we have to. Shizuo let out a peculiar sigh. And then, you and I can talk again about you marrying my daughter. Huh? Before Kano could be sure he'd heard that right, Shizuo hung up. Huh? What? He stared at the phone, his mind reeling. And then he was hit with a veritable explosion of joy. Yes! Kano leapt into the air and shouted with delight, his voice echoing through the Shibuya streets. Do it now, kiss her! Once the crowd had put Achi back down on his feet, he rushed over to Hitomi. So, Hitomi. Yes? Hitomi, there's so much stuff I want to talk to you about. So many things I want to tell you. He gazed into her face. But, Suzune... He didn't know how to continue. Hitomi smiled warmly. She understood. Go on, Achi. Go see your sister. There's nobody here in trouble that you need to rescue now. Thank you. I better get going then, to see Suzune. Achi broke away from his circle of friends and headed out of the Shibuya Scramble. Strangely enough, his leg didn't hurt too much now. Despite all that had happened, he felt invigorated, as if he was just waking to a brand new day. Achi! Hitomi called after him. I'll see you again, won't I? Achi nodded vigorously. Of course! Just come to Shibuya, you'll find me. He had been born and raised in Shibuya, but after today, he loved the place more than ever. I want the kiss, damn it! No, don't do this. No. What? black bookmark. Yay.
お前はまだ復讐を考えているな。
パスコードが変えられている。
解放戦線を裏切ったのか。
目的となる貨物車両を3両目。警報は解除したんじゃないのか。
定か、そちらの進行は。
潜入経路に問題はない。みんな黙らせていいんだよ。
彼女の専門は暗号破り。
それ以外に理由はない。
待て。
渋谷の文字はお前とは相性が悪いみたいだ。
We have an anime. There's so much. What's this anime thing? Where's that? What? How do I access that? Well, there's a lot more that the game has to offer. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. Thank you for joining me. Stay tuned for, whatever comes next. We're gonna do some, secrets. Game... those game codes, like up, up, down, down, left, right, stuff like that. We're gonna do little codes like that. And the pop quiz thing, blah blah blah. So much stuff. So stay tuned. I'll catch you next time. Bye!